yen to akase bono so na kire se medemo kwa ko ginam ewo ye konfo ba ye friend no ye nana agrada the great nana agrada o kire so no wako bani akwakoji eduro ade aba ye ne sika gari o sika gari mami e hye sa adwumadi we ya se bre no ye konfo ne tu atwi ya na se nyankopon epa ne so entoma no ana ye se ne sa de wasesa de obaye osofo ana de edi foforo eto no so aye friend se aye evangelist Mama Patricia Ote na sorry ID or the toast Heaven's Gate Chapel. Na adofo se fofra baba to adwane se enche bia na mami nkofo bi ade nsemi beto na so a omo kire se wa dupi o ma na obu o musika kase pa anya asem keto a ko so ade ko hwehwemu ehun se no ade aye agrada aye na nya adepa ena agrada ababonten ebadi nkomo bi ade afa ye gana mamu hanom na edin a wo de boboy a wo kire se aye papa bi so efe na ye kofi odro ono so na ye kofa ba de ma aye Alabaster Miracle Church anono osi oni na na edisika no oni na edisika na na aye court asoma aye police for akochi aye Pastor Kofi Odro.
Young people who watch us, we just want to set the perspective for you. How has the presidency dealt with the disagreement with the head of the judiciary? It's important that in all constitutional regimes, and beginning from 1778, when Montesquieu wrote that book entitled The Spirit of the Laws, the issue about separation of powers, independence of the three arms of government, and some people add the fourth being the media, has become very, very paramount. And it's almost like a measure of how a democratic environment is working, whether the legislative arm is independent of the executive and vice versa, and the judiciary and all of that. Because there's always bound to be tension between the heads of these institutions. One wants something done. The executive has its role to implement policy. The legislature has its role to make law. But you will find that in checks and balances, all of them have a way of, legislature has a way of doing policy or shaping policy or changing policy. The judiciary has a way of changing legislation by using, they call it judge-made law. And when there's judge-made law, it means that the legislature, the judiciary, is taking up the role of the legislature by making law. So these are the tensions there, and that's what really every constitution and the conduct of the constitutional actors is set out to delimit. Okay, so we look at, well, there was 1960, there was 169, 92, 2001, 2017, 18, 2023. Now we have listed in the history of Ghana where there's been these brushes that have happened between especially between the executive president and the judiciary. The first one occurred in 1963. What date was it again? Do they have the date? The date was 11th December 1963. There had been a bomb thrown on Kwame Nkrumah somewhere in Kulungugu in the upper region, as it was then called. And the people involved were some important people who were arrested. The foreign minister, Akwaje, was arrested. He used to be interior minister. At that time, he was foreign minister. He was arrested. Terry Adamafiu, the information minister, was also arrested. The trial was known as the Terry Adamafiu trial. After the trial, Akwaje and Terry Adamafiu were set free. Others were convicted. His Excellency was not happy with it. So what did he do? He fired Sir Akukosa. Sir Akukosa was the same person who swore Kwame Nkrumah in during his 1960 event, but Sir Akukosa was fired. Nkrumah fired Akukosa for the ruling against the government in the Kulungugu. What happened was Akukosa chaired the panel that said that Terry Adamafiu and Akwaje were not guilty of the offense of premeditated murder against the president. On 11 December 1963, they were summarily dismissed by the president. Then the constitution at the time was sort of quiet on it. So the president acted by removing Akukosa and then passed legislation. So we write it here. So Nkrumah rushed a bill to parliament through his attorney general, the Honorable Col Swansea, seeking to gain the powers to fire judges. Subsequently, the parliament passed that law for the Osage. So Edward Akufo-Addo was sacked, and also sacked was Kofi Adumoah Bosman and R.S. Blame. They were all fired as Supreme Court justices. So that ended one chapter. Those who wrote the constitution were eager to stop the president or the leader of the government from being able to remove the chief justice. So the 1969 constitution has no role for the president to remove the chief justice. It has no Article 146 process. In fact, the 1969 constitution went to the other extreme, where the leader of the government, the prime minister, can under no circumstance remove a chief justice. Nobody can send a petition. That window was completely closed as to whether somebody can send a petition for the removal of the Chief Justice. Given the history that the First Republic came from, the good people of Ghana at the time decided that no, they don't want that. So the only thing that Busia could do when, of course, the brushes always happen, Busia was concerned about a ruling of the Supreme Court. What was it about? Somebody who had been fired. It was thought that they were Nkrumah people, so the Busia people took over and they were firing some of the important leaders of the Nkrumah people. They gathered 568 people. They call it the Apollo 568, and they were all given letters to go home. They were chief directors. One of them, Mr. Salah, decided to test the matter at the Supreme Court and said that the Prime Minister and the government cannot sack him. In the ruling, which Salah won, the Supreme Court's justices, the case entitled Salah and Attorney General, the Supreme Court ruled by a majority, Philip Archer in the majority, EMP Sowa in the majority, Apalu, three of them for the majority, Justice ssreak and Justice Enin for the minority. They ruled in favor of the applicant that the Prime Minister cannot sack Mr. Salah. Busia was concerned, but he didn't have the power to sack judges because the system had protected the judges through the provisions of the 1969 Constitution. So what did Busia say? That's Justice Sowa here, that's Justice Apalu here. And then Busia said to the general public that no court can enforce any decision that seeks to compel the government to employ or re-employ anyone. That will be a futile exercise, and I wish to make that perfectly clear. 18th April 1970 is when Prime Minister Busia made the statement. Busia did not have the power to fire the judges, but perhaps if he did, maybe he would have fired somebody, because these things get to high pitch. But it is important that the system works in a way that stops the politicians who can get emotional about some of these things and stops them quite nicely. So that was the experience over there in the Second Republic. Now, let's come to the 1992 Constitution. Suffice it to say, though, that the 1979 Constitution had a provision like Article 146. I think it was Article 125 or something like that. It's in the 1979 Constitution. You can Google and check. Article 124, they are being corrected. It's Article 124 of the 1979 Constitution had a provision very similar to Article 146 that we have today. It allowed the impeachment process, but it was to be guided very, very carefully and used only sparingly in the extreme situations. But enter 1992, where we have an Article 146 process that could herald the removal of a Supreme Court judge or a Chief Justice. On 31st December in the 31st December decision, which was in 1993 actually, Fly Lieutenant Rawlings was unhappy with the ruling. What happened? The Supreme Court gave a verdict, a very damning one, a 5-4 decision in favor of the NPP, which had gone to court to apply that J.J. Rawlings' military coup d'etat that brought him to power, and which of course ended and heralded the 1992 Constitution, cannot continuously be celebrated under a constitutional dispensation. This was the case that was sent to court by Peter Ajete, may he rest in peace, former Speaker of Parliament, and at that time a leading member of the NPP. He later became its chairman. Peter Ajete was